We would like to say thank you to Fiberglass Warehouse for being the sponsor of today's episode. Available online and shipping anywhere in the U.S., they have all the materials you need for whatever you're working on. Check them out today at fiberglasswarehouse.com. Welcome to Boats and Pros, the podcast where we tackle all things boats and fiberglass repair. Whether you're a seasoned pro or a weekend warrior, we've got the tips to keep your boat in tip-top shape. Let's get into it. Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Boats and Pros. You got Nick Ireson here.
John Economy.
And we have a special guest today, not only because he's a good friend of mine and a super interesting guy, but also because he is our first guest on the podcast. We have Josh Maxwell, who is an ocean engineer and a marine designer. He's also a boat builder in his spare time for fun and an avid outdoorsman, fisherman, and things like that. So, hi, Josh. Welcome to the show.
Hey, everybody.
How you doing today?
Oh, doing good. Had a fun-filled meeting going. Went to a NOAA meeting where they're trying to cut out boating, or actually cut out fishing in the Atlantic off the coast of Jacksonville here for 2 months a year to quote-unquote save the red snapper. So there seems to be a lot of them out there. I'm surprised they are proposing this, but then
But let me guess, they're going to leave the commercial guys to it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's their favorite trick is to pull the red snapper away from the guys who are going to catch the least of them.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is with this plan, if they don't do anything by 2044, we'll have met their magical number of red snappers we need to have. And if we implement all these changes, they don't know how much faster it will go. And everybody there said they're catching too many red snappers. They can't catch anything else. So the science just seems to need some massaging to maybe any reality.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Those guys are like, you go out there and when you get on them, they're like cockroaches. They're everywhere and makes you think that it's an infinite resource. But of course, I guess it's not. And they're doing their best to control it. But they definitely seem to make some questionable decisions sometimes. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about how we met. Josh, I think that you actually must have gotten my business card from someone way back in the original IMC Boatworks days when I was with my original business partner, Chris Newport, and had someone call us for a job or something. I think that's how we met. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I had a friend, Dave Lincoln, who had a utility company for marinas, and he had fabricated his own fire extinguisher cabinets, and he was looking for somebody to build them, as well as some other parts and components for marinas. And he had asked my friend Tim and I, and we just we were at our bandwidth with what we were trying to do. So we all had our day jobs, so trying to build fiberglass in the spare time takes a lot of time. So that's somehow we got your information, got you guys linked up.
Yeah, we didn't end up doing anything with them, but I do remember he had a really cool project going on, and he had some really elaborate custom-made fiberglass hinges that were, I don't know if he had to do it because it was part of the fire retardantness or what he was doing, but I know there was a lot of hours in those, and it was like a $12 piece that you could buy if you just bought a metal one. So I can't remember why he wanted them to be fiberglass.
He was a mad scientist. If he when we were all growing up, it was pushed to go to college, right? So he grew up in a day when, college was an option. Yeah, there's a lot of doing the trades. And so he went into the trades, and I call him the world's smartest plumber. And if he had gone to college, there wouldn't be any cancer. I mean, he was just a genius. He would have solved it. But instead, he focused on plumbing and fire systems. So he came up with crazy ideas of how he thought it was the right way to do it. You saw his fire extinguisher cabinet. I mean, so overcomplicated for a simple task.
Yes, I was going to say, it seemed like it was a classic example of just because you can doesn't mean you should. But yeah, so I think we may have talked once or twice before, but that was the first time that we really met each other in person. And you were working on a project of your own that was over at that same property, I think, down in Golden Gate, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was my first house. We had a little shop in the back, and a couple buddies and me, we had our own little fiberglass company. We called it Crab Creek Boatworks. And we originally started it all because we bought a '69 AquaSport 222, and we were determined to basically fix it to the boat we wanted. Everybody else would want one, pop a mold, become millionaires building boats. Everybody's dreaming. And
Dude, it's so funny. I just remembered when you said that that boat had you had that boat there too, and it had the original windows in the hull, didn't it?
exactly, and it had the part in the side because it had the side pop out panel and everything, but somebody had done a real horrible job going over it. The boat's name was Macho 69.
Man, that was an elaborate boat for back in the day. It was a flatback 222, right?
Yep.
And they had put, I don't know how many of them they did or what part of the progression, but these guys had laminated, was it real glass?
Yeah. Yeah, it was real glass.
These guys had laminated real glass into the hull of the boat so that you could, it was an AquaSport 222. It was, so you could open up a hatch and look down through the hole and see what was underneath you.
Yeah, it was cool, and we were going to take that out because we didn't think it was practical.
Oh, it was
But
totally not practical.
oh yeah, but in starting that dream, we kind of got into building some panels for some builders downtown that needed some fiberglass panels, and then we restored some uh, tanks for pool equipment. Because when they build those, they use just iron pipe for reinforcement, which does great around salt environments in Naples.
Oh,
Um,
sure.
but we kind of went down all these little paths and restored a couple boats for people, and eventually, my dad and I decided to get rid of our old boat, or it wasn't worth putting any more money into it. I think we have a friend in New York who, if anybody ever needs the randomest Evinrude parts, Dale has them. And he had sent us a care package of what it would take to get our old Ocean Pro running. And we put a couple weeks into it, took it out, broke down again, and said, "All right, we're building a new boat." And that boat, it was an old Islander, and it was a wet riding boat. And so, my dad had a friend that had a 73 Hewes. And my dad's like, "Man, I'd really like to get a boat like Lee's." Well, lo and behold, we found a 76 for sale, 3 streets over from him. And the boat had some crazy lineage. So a friend of ours, Kit Sawyer, used to own the boat. And a good friend of mine, Tiffany, grew up in that boat. It was her dad's boat. And then a
Is
friend
this
of ours,
a bone fisher that we're talking about here with the lappy
yep,
sides, right?
yep,
Yep.
old Lassie bone fisher.
What are we,
And
16 foot?
yeah, 16 foot, 1976. And a friend of ours, Robbie, bought it from Kit, did a quasi restoration on it, repainted it, fished it for years, sold it to another guy that my dad knew, and that's who we ended up buying it. So it was, it was your typical old bone fisher. Had a couple soft spots here and there. Transom was solid, floor was solid. Really good bones. And we were just going to do a real quick, quote unquote, restoration on it.
Boy, I've heard
Put
that
some new,
before.
yeah, put some new power on it. We actually, I think, we were thinking we could fix the Evinrude and put it on there at first, and then kind of abandoned that idea. So 3 years later, we spent more money in Bigger's Chicken Wings and Bud Light than the boat's probably worth. But I had a great time, and we flipped it over. We got everything through, took it all down to pretty much the original gel coat. There's a couple other layers of paint, but really got it figured out. It's all Interlux product, and they have that 2000 E, super heavy primer that's not supposed to let like spider crack through and everything. So kind of got everything the best we could, and brought it all to White Lake Yellow. It was originally a blend boat, and thanks to some oyster parts down south, there's places where color shines through. Uh, but yeah, I mean, we had a blast. It did take a long time, and the trials and tribulations of building boats outside, not in a covered spot in a garage.
Not
Paint,
just
laying,
outside, Florida outside.
yeah, man. I mean,
Torrential
wakefulness.
rain or humidity or bugs or scorching heat or all of the above in the same 10 minutes. Take your pick.
Well, what we found, so my buddy Tim helped me paint the boat. I mean, he helped me every step of the way. Couldn't have probably done it without him, and I learned a bunch because it was the first boat I had done start to finish that I really didn't let other people do too much work on because it was mine. Yeah, me and my dad split it, and uh, when we painted the boat finally, you know, Tim did a great job. There's maybe 2 runs in the whole thing. We're like, okay, we can fix this.
What
And
paint
went
system
to
did you use?
Interlap Perfection.
Okay. Is that a catalyzed, I'm assuming?
Oh yeah. And um, but it must have just been the night that dew set in, even though we tried to make our own little paint booth, quote unquote. And the next day, there's like this haze that kind of set in on the paint anywhere that the dew kind of stuck to. And so we ended up having to wet sand it. I mean, we took it down to 4,000 grit and it looked perfect after that. And then didn't do didn't do the rest of the boat as good a justice, but
Yeah, if
yeah.
taking something to 4,000, that's a high standard to set, especially if you're like, I don't know if you held your feet to the fire enough to use guide coat on it or not, but if you did, like,
Oh God, we did so many coats of guys, so many
what were
coats
you
of guys.
using?
It was a
Dykem, or were
powder.
you using, yeah, that black
Um,
powder stuff?
yeah, it was like fingerprint powder. And my buddy
Yep.
Tim would come over. I think it was perfect. We're ready to paint, and he'd go over it and he'd sand it, and he'd go, "I'll be back tomorrow." And I mean, it was. I have a love-hate relationship with guide coats after that. I mean, they do their they they show you where you're.
Oh, yeah.
But
Have you ever used
yeah,
Dykem?
I'm not sure if that's the one we used or if there's another one. That was
Dykem is, it's like a machinist dye, and you reduce it with acetone and you wipe it on with a rag, and it leaves like a blue haze,
or white.
and it fills. That stuff is the like god level version of it. It is horrible. I mean, if you want to know the truth, you put that on there. But if you had just sanded it with 3,000 grit and you put it on there, you would still see scratches. But the
Oh,
idea is that you don't leave the grit until there are no scratches. But it's horrible. I
if I remember right, ours was a water soluble powder. So that way you knew you could get it, you could wash it off. Um, and yeah, I'm going back now 8 years on what we used, but it was multiple rounds. And he wouldn't come over to help me paint it until he felt it was ready. So
Yeah, I remember. I never really knew him nearly as much as we talked. But if I remember correctly, he had dreads, and he kind of would give a totally different impression if you just looked at him than what he actually was. And he
oh
was
yeah,
like
man.
a
I call him the dreadneck. I mean, he's got dreadlocks down to well down to his knees now. And but
but like
he's
a super technical, detail oriented guy, right?
super. I mean, he's just like Dave that we were talking about. One of the smartest people I know. And somehow, I mean, he bought his first boat shortly after I got home from college. Got a Carolina skiff, but that started his obsession. And he worked for Geico Marine, doing some stuff on their air intakes. Helped a bunch of people restore boats, and he's still working for a bunch of guides down in Southwest Florida, keeping their boats looking as good as their fees, what they're charging their clients. They got a pretty looking boat.
Nice. Well, shout out to Tim. And hey, dude, is a Carolina skiff not the ultimate first boat?
Oh man, he still has it.
Yeah,
And he tried to sink it, and it was impossible. He went camping one
it's not
time, and
happening.
the water came over the transom from the waves, splashing over. He looked out, and said, "Oh crap!" He was never sank the boat, but he had water up to the gills. So,
That little boat will do anything you want other than keep you comfortable in a chop. But you can only ask so much from flat bottom plywood style build.
yeah.
But so you got the Hewes finished up, and did you sell it?
Oh no, no. So um, I met my wife, and she, saw this boat we were working on. We were just dating at the time, and tricked her into marrying me. And while we were, before the wedding, we kind of said, "Hey, let's go ahead and use the boat in the wedding." Decided we wanted to finish this boat. I think my wife just had enough of me spending too many nights with my dad, my brother, and my buddy Tim, um, working on it. So, she kind of rolled up her sleeves and helped us, with all the interior painting and all the non-skid. We used Kiwi grip and, kind of helped push it across the finish line. So we got it splashed July 4th, 2017. Um,
Okay.
And like all projects that can't go perfect, we got about 100 yards from the boat ramp for the motor. Brand new 90.
Huh.
So we
Brand new?
replaced, oh yeah, we replaced every single component on the boat except for the hull and the pickup and the gas tank.
Oh, you got with the pickup?
Yeah. So our buddy Kit, the boat mechanic that used to own the boat, him and his mechanic Clay, um, yeah, out on the beach for 4th of July, and they came and, you know, kind of helped us get everything situated. And sure enough, we were able to still get out and watch the 4th of July and fireworks. And, after that, we used for our wedding, countless days and hours down in Chuckalus, down way in south of Naples. I mean, it was our refuge during COVID. And when we were getting ready to move up here to Jacksonville, a friend of mine had 21-foot Willys. That was awesome setup. His dad used it as a guy's boat, but as a guy's boat, and he posted it for sale. And I was like, that would be a great boat, family up in Jacksonville. And I was told over
What
my
kind of
dead
boat did you
mom,
say? I missed it.
oh, there was a 21-foot Willie Roberts.
Why am
There,
I not
it's
placing that? Hang on, let me get on my Googler.
oh yeah, no, it's a classic hull. I think there's 16 and 18s. Might have been more popular, but good looking boat. They're 21, supposed to be a real good ride, still shallow draft. But no, his dad Todd Troy had a 76, also fighting Lady Yellow Willys. So we liked getting the old classic girls up on the beach when we could. Uh,
Wow, this is an interesting looking boat. I'm not sure if I'm looking at a 21 or a smaller one, but it's very. I like it. It's reminiscent of a flats boat. Hang on, okay, here's a 20. Yeah, it's like dude, it's kind of like an AquaSport Meta Hewes, and they took away that lappy sides.
right. No, I mean it's super cool boat. Um, but I was told I wasn't allowed to give up a family member to get a new boat, so we kept the Hughes, and I told her, well, we're gonna have to get a bigger boat then. We're gonna have to be a 2 boat family, and
Oh no, did your wife make you buy another boat? Dude, you poor thing. Are you
I
okay?
know it's horrible. It's horrible.
We're gonna have to talk to her about that.
We're building a house first, and then boat number two.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah, well, I got to give her some kudos though. So we had a huge shop down in Naples. So we built a real nice piece of property, 5 acres, 1,800 square foot steel building. Everything you could want. Left all that, moved to North Florida. So I think I'm gonna have the biggest garage in Neptune Beach. So it's long enough. I can have my F-150 and the Hughes and close the front and rear garage door. So I think it's gonna be 28 by 50 when it's done. So,
Wow. Nice. Is it a pull through? Is that what you said? Close both
yeah,
doors?
yeah, yeah. We're doing
Pull
it
through
as
is
a
the
full suit.
way to go. John and I did that in our shop up here, and just even for ventilation purposes, I'm sure you won't be getting down on painting anything in there, but if you do start slinging some fumes, it's really nice to have those pass through doors.
Oh, it's gonna happen. So we didn't do a full restoration on the Hughes. Anything that was rotten got replaced at that time. Since then, there's a few little soft spots that kind of popped up in the deck. And when the house is done, that's the first thing we're working on is those. But my plan is when the kids are old enough to sand with me, then we'll do a full restoration with new stringers, deck, everything.
Yeah, free
So
labor.
they'll be
Yeah,
they
for
will be
sure.
well if they want to take it out, they've got to be able to work on it.
Absolutely. So you said that you used a primer on the Hughes that was supposedly going to hold down spider cracks and stuff. How did that play out?
It's done great. I've got a few spots where you mentioned in one of your earlier podcasts where like some moisture gets behind the paint and creates a little bubble. I've got
Yeah.
a few spots where that's happening, and I don't know if it's you had talked about leaving the boat in. It's spent 1 week here, 1 week there in the water. Usually it's been high and dry, but I've had it covered when I didn't have a big garage. I had it covered with it.
Where are the bubbles
Yeah.
at?
Uh, got some kind of on the sides towards the back and then on the transom. So the transom, I'm sure there's some water getting into that old wood that we're gonna do a little
Yeah, is
bit
it on
of.
the freeboard or below the water line on the sides?
Oh,
Yeah, that's interesting. That might be something. different then.
All I can figure is water's getting behind it somehow, and I'm not sure. We're gonna do some grinding and some painting here later this year to see what's going on.
Yeah, usually when I've seen those, like the bubbles, it's been in a situation where I've actually never seen it below the waterline with all grip. But not because it doesn't do it, just because I haven't seen one that's actually done it. But I've seen it before where people will spray like the insides of hatches, or even if you spray your deck and then you park the boat in such a way where it doesn't fully drain and there's like a little triangle corner of water and it'll get it in just that. Or a lot of times I've seen it on Yamaha jet skis. They've had huge warranty issues with it in their footwells. The Yamaha paints their skis out of the factory and their footwells don't drain. So unless you park the ski with the nose pointing, at like a 45-degree angle or whatever it is, with the tongue of the trailer literally up in the air, then they hold water right there. And every single one of them, the paint bubbles up. And they honor the warranty on it, but it's
That's what
like,
I wondered if it was because I've got a canopy on it, one of those,
well,
whatever.
you could have
And
a
I'm
little
wondering
pressure
if
cooker going on.
that's kind of what I'm thinking, but that'll all be over soon. So we're supposed to be 2 months from now, should be in the house. Fingers
Yeah, there you go.
Congratulations.
So was the Hewes the first boat that you really worked on then, or was that?
crossed. The Hughes was the first one that we did a full restoration on. So my family's always had boats. So like when I was born, they had a little Mitchell tri-hole. Then we had like everybody a pontoon boat for a while, and you can fish a pontoon boat, man. It's terrible.
Oh yeah.
And then when I was getting into, I guess it would have been middle school, um, we found my dad was wanting to get an extra wide John boat, and then up in Fort Myers, since '94, Islander came for sale for a decent price, and we went up, looked at it, took it for a test drive, and it was the fastest thing he'd ever had.
What do I have
And
on the
so
back?
it is a 115 Ocean Pro. It was rated for a 150, but it still get up and do, 47 miles an hour,
Wow.
which, was pretty fast for only 115.
Sure.
So, but like all boats, you buy a boat, first thing you need to redo is rewire it. I don't care how nice the boat it is. Nobody, nobody does their wiring right. I mean, hell, Tim was working on a one time and found a Band-Aid, as butt connector. It was a brand new.
Well, wait, like literally a Band-Aid?
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually saw something from a affiliated company with that company once that was basically stringers that were like maybe 3 ounces of chop strand mat, and that was the whole shebang. Like that was the entirety of the stringer. Actually, no, I'm wrong. That was an Craft. It was a 24.
Yeah, they had their own issues.
Yeah, we'll beep out.
Yeah.
But
Let's
okay,
say-
so
let's
anyways,
say
I
cross-eyed.
I got you off track. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. So, but no, we bought that boat, and sure enough, I mean, the wiring was a nightmare. So we rewired it, and I think the first time we redid it was in high school. And then my mom went through some health issues in high school where we didn't use the boat for a while. And if you don't take the drain plug out of your boat, it'll fill with water. Found that out at a young age.
That
And
is a guarantee.
yep. And so the wiring was toast after that. And so I think it was end of high school or early into college, I rewired it again. But no, I think this is either high school or college. I was rewiring the boat one more time. And, I'm not a petite guy. And those Islanders were made for very small people to work on them. And I'd found if I could wiggle my shoulders, like I could get into the bill jacks, and I could the wires that I needed that I put in by the console. And I went, but I couldn't get out.
Head first down into in between the stringers.
Yeah. The in between two bait wells, reaching far up to the console, and I think I got basically almost to the bottom of my rib cage. And I realized I could not get out, and I don't know if it's 10 minutes or 2 hours, but it's like, well, crap, I'm gonna be here till the morning. My dad's gonna go to work and find me stuck in the boat, and I think
Dude, I don't.
was
Would you survive being that long overnight? You think upside down?
I have no idea. Thankfully, I didn't have to find out. He was going to bed. He's like, Josh hasn't come in yet. So he went out, checked on me, and just saw my feet dangling out of the boat. And
Get the hell out of here, dude! You literally just waited.
Yeah, I mean, what if I can't get out?
So
don't have my
wait,
cell
did you
phone
go
on.
in like arms first, and you couldn't get your arms around your sides or anything to push off of anything?
Yeah, I mean, like my arms were extended forward. I mean, those boats, there's a bait well and a live well, and then kind of between those, and it's a flats boat, so there's only maybe a 14-inch area, and then you got fuel tank, and it was truly a nightmare. And he was able to wrestle me back up, and I'm gonna guess maybe it was 20 to 30 minutes. I have no idea.
Wow. I hope he poked you in the butthole before he pulled you out.
I don't think he did that. I think he was just shocked how stupid I could be.
Dude, it happens so fast. I've done some really stupid things in the moment, and I'll tell you, this is the earmark of a stupid thing. You don't really think about it, you just do it, and then all of a sudden, oops.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure.
Wow, dude, that could have ended badly.
Oh, it could have. Yeah. But no, all through college, everybody always had boats, and there's always lights that need to be added on, or new plumbing added, or so it's always boats have always been a midnight passion for working on. So
There's something about them. I don't know what it is. I couldn't really put into words what is more interesting to me about a boat than a car or something else. But I think that if you just have it in you, I don't know. I guess I'm clearly not supposed to be a poet because that was not very descriptive. But Marine Industry Association on here, that's affiliated with your work, right?
kind of. So when I was down in Naples, my company that I worked for had always been real active in the marine industry, Collier County organization. And when I was, I don't know, 22, 23, I started going to the meetings, and it was awesome. I mean, you got to sit behind kind of the greats of the industry. You had Turner, his family had dredged Naples Bay to make all the roads around. And he ran, his family had Turner Marine. He had a guy named Henry Lowe, who, I mean, his story was just awesome. Yeah, I think he was born somewhere. Listen, I knew he grew up on an island around Isle Free back before everything was built up. And I know he was born somewhere down south. I don't think he was born in one of the formal hospitals up in Fort Myers or anything at the time. But you had all these guys that would get together every couple months and, you know, swap war stories, marine industry. And so that was fun just to get there and, listen in. I heard him talk about a cat fell off the dock at, I think it was either Kelly's Fish House or the old OMC Marine, and a Jewfish like ate it and then spit it back up, and the cat climbed back up. Yeah, Jim Calvin was getting him to talk about that one night. He's another,
Wow.
old timer, the guard that's a Marine contractor down there. And, it's just got to, hear all these awesome stories. And you start realizing, like, why does everybody get together? It wasn't for a cocktail hour. It was for camaraderie, but also to protect the industry. You start hearing about the past where they tried to implement manatee zones in Naples Bay that would just eventually stop voting. Idle speeds everywhere. Nobody can get on a plane.
The manatee zones are crazy too. The law enforcement officers will hide in the mangroves and they'll watch you go 100 yards too far into a manatee zone without coming off plane, and then they'll burn an entire flat to give you a ticket. And it's like, what are we doing here, dude?
How many manatees did you just hit?
Oh
Busy.
yeah,
I understand the idea behind it, but the execution that actually ends up happening in reality sometimes just does not match the intent.
yeah, for sure. I mean, there's bases, to save all the God's creatures, right? But sometimes I think faulty science and passion and also grants get in the way of what really needs to happen. But when they tried to implement that stuff down in Naples, the marine industry got together, and that was back when they didn't have fun. They didn't have really a bank account. There were people that put on boat shows and tried to healthy industry. It's good for everybody that sold boats, built docks, worked on boats. That was important to them. And if this went through, and the industry was practically dead. I mean, everybody could just get canoe. If you couldn't go on plane, nobody wants to push their boats around at 2 knots.
So you're talking about much more manatee zone than what there is currently. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, for this area specifically, they were going to shut down Naples Bay, and the marine industry cost a half around. I think it ended up costing about $250,000 back then to fight the, they had to hire an attorney and, push back, and they were able to get those zones back to a more common sense approach. And so I start hearing about all of that, and then you start seeing the regulations getting pushed on, whether it be docks, boat access, fishing areas, beach areas, whatever it be in Collier County. And you start seeing that the organizations are protecting all the boaters' rights, not just the guys that sell the boats, not just the guys that service the boats, but also the individual boaters themselves. None of them, but what they're doing is helping protect their right to boat. And then I got involved in the state organization, Marina in Florida. I was a representative for the Collier County chapter. So I don't know, 4 years, 5 years, however long they tricked me into doing it. But then I got to meet some incredible people across the state who have done the same kind of, protecting of the industry for Stewart, North Florida, Northwest Florida, Myers, Tampa Bay, all those areas, have their own marine industry organization. And, I got involved in the board, got training, secretary, but, starting to get to meet our lobbyists in Tallahassee and start to realize that this lady has single-handedly saved boating in the state of Florida, countless times because every new bills are getting proposed that would, change where you could build docks, how many slips you could have. I mean, you name it. There's always somebody that has a better idea, and sometimes they're not the best idea for the boat. And so it's been kind of real interesting getting involved in all that. And this last year, they asked me to be president of the state organization. So now it's my tenure. So me and Donald presidents at the same time. Good things could happen.
Very nice. Well, congratulations on that.
Yeah.
It's got to be pretty interesting to be part of.
It's not dull. I mean, I try to keep up with our lobbyist Missy the best I can. He sends out a bunch of emails there's countless bills.
So let me ask you a question then, because this is actually, as a Floridian, something I never really had thought about before, because it just kind of was always a thing, like a traffic light or a stop sign or any other thing. But clearly the manatee zones can be a nuisance, but clearly there's also a reason for them too. So from a perspective of the logical solution and someone who's just looking at it like somewhat from the outside, but obviously you're protecting voters' rights. That's not to say that you're by any means against manatees, but so like, what is a realistic proposal for a manatee zone where everybody wins?
So they did I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago, they did what's called an LRRC committee down in Collier County, is local regulatory review committee, and it was put on by FWC. And they, basically have what they call the manatee boat spatial overlap. And they've got manatees with trackers, so they know where they're going, right? And then they also, pretty much any manatee that's killed, they do an autopsy on it to find out, was it boat impact, was it just old age, were they not eating right, what killed the manatee. And they're able to kind of through GIS look at, where are the conflict areas, where is there a high manatee and high boat speed. And so they kind of highlighted that throughout Collier County. And, what was funny is some of them had been posted my entire life, which is never legally expanded on. So those are really to get behind, because everybody who's already going slow there. And then there was really, I think, only one. No, there was a couple new ones. But there's one main one that was extended. That but between Naples Bay and Key Wade and on the way to Marco, there were some areas in the north Collier County areas that just made sense. Well, some of them were for boater safety, but believe it or not, it's really hard to kind of institute a zone for boater safety. So when there's manatee data to support it,
it's easier to enforce.
Yeah, it's easier to get behind and support it. Because the last
That's
thing you want to
interesting.
do is, go ahead.
Sorry. Pretty much it's the same logic of whenever a municipality decides to install a traffic light. If there's a high instance of accidents there, then they got to adjust the traffic flow.
Yeah, exactly. So
I guess that makes sense.
A lot of that same thing. And right now up in Duval County, there's a group that's, reviewing the manatee protection plan because there was 5 manatees that were impacted in the port. And when manatees are, having a fun time mating, they're a little oblivious to anything else. And apparently there was a altercation with 5 manatees, a very large vessel that didn't end well for the manatee. So that's how.
So you're telling me someone plowed through a 5 manatee gang, basically?
Yeah, the ship doesn't really plow through too much. It's very slow.
They were very oblivious.
Exactly. So, unfortunately,
what a way to go if you're going to do it.
Oh yeah, heck, they ended that. But yeah, so that's kind of the new thing up here, that they're wanting to look for the manatee protection plan to make sure there are any changes that are needed. And really plans all around the state. It's a local document planning about how many boats you can have per linear foot of shoreline, or there's a lot of regulations for all different state counties, but it's kind of a zoning document to kind of control the boating growth in those areas to where it makes sense for environmental reasons, for manatees and seagrass, etc. So that's one of the things marine industry gets involved in too, is just kind of keeping our temperature on all these proposed changes to make sure that you don't have a marina site that was allowed to have 200 slips at one point, and then through this newfound thought of a zoning document, you only can have 10. That takes a huge financial impact to that marina if it ever gets rebuilt. So those are some of the things that we look out for.
So it sounds like the Marine Industry Association is kind of tied in with the construction side of things too, then?
Yeah, more on the kind of boat user. I'd say there's more marina owners, and there's owners, managers, and boat sales are probably the prominent members in all the marine industry groups. There's another one, Florida Marine Contractors Association, that's more contractor focused, but we do have quite a few contractors throughout the state and all the different chapters in the state chapter too. So it's a good diverse.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, we've jumped around a lot, and we've already got 50 minutes, which is pretty freaking awesome, because we haven't even actually started talking about your wealth of knowledge yet. But why don't you tell us a little bit about your job now and what you do on a daily basis, and let her rip.
So, when I was in Naples, I spent 15 years at a consulting company that specialized in marina planning. So everything from single family docks to we did some conceptual port projects, but really got to go to some of the most beautiful places in the Caribbean and design private marinas for people. Got to work on the oldest yacht club in the state of Florida in Tampa Yacht Club, as well as getting to rebuild a lot of marinas around my hometown in Naples. And small firm, but we did a lot of work, and I was able to make some connections to where I'm at now. Now I'm employed at Bellingham Marine. We're the world's largest floating dock supplier and contractor. So we're also a general contractor, but we also make our own floating docks.
Will they be okay with us leaving their name in this?
I'll find out. I'll shoot you a note tomorrow.
Okay.
But that's what brought us up to Jacksonville. So, um, our primary line's concrete docks, but we also have, you're the plastic float with aluminum framing and decking or timber framing and decking. So,
Oh,
but
you
yeah, no,
guys would kill it up in Tennessee if you're in the floating game.
so that's it's a little bit of a different market. Those are usually steel truss stock. And we have made those in the past, but we're not currently pushing in those areas. So our primary focus is the coastal regions of the United States, the Great Lakes. We've got divisions in Australia, New Zealand, the licensing in Spain. So we try to cover the whole globe.
Wow. What is your position there?
So I'm the East Coast engineer. So my territory is Maine to Texas. Getting to learn the structural engineering of how these docks all work from a fantastic engineer out in Washington State. So I go out there a couple times a year for schooling, but we meet regularly. My job prior to coming here was the seawalls, the utility systems, the fixed docks, pretty much everything that had to do with the marina except for the floating docks and pilings. I always left that up to the manufacturer. And well, now I'm the engineer for the manufacturer. So really focusing in on that structural side of things. So it's been a lot of fun. It was a good move for us.
That seems like so many factors at play there that there has to be a ton of different ways that you approach that. Because I'm thinking about designing a marina. Each one has to be unique in the way that the water body around it interacts with it, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, the current, the waves, what wind are you designing to? How big are the vessels? I mean, 125, 150-foot boat, the wind load on that one boat can be as much as an entire marina of 40 to 50 boats. So it's, it's, every job has its own unique challenges. And then trying to get it all to float right. I mean, you're playing naval architect on concrete barges, essentially.
So you're measuring the wind load on a boat because that boat's going to transfer that load onto your dock. Is that right?
Correct. And then the dock then distributes to the piling system or whatever anchoring you're using. So
Wow.
it's kind of following that load path down to make sure that, you know, nothing's going to break before it's supposed to, which really nothing should break. I guess the support before it's supposed to, that's going to be whenever you're exceeding your wind load or wave load.
Sure. Or I guess like any product, there has to be a, a end life on it, right? Which is an interesting thing. I don't want to get far off track at all, but just real quick, it's an interesting thing that people don't really consider that with boats. They tend to think it's fiberglass. It's what it's as waterproof as something can really be, and it should be a lifetime product, right? And that's just totally not the case.
It's a lifetime product if you know how to work on boats.
Yeah, just like a car, right? How many miles will the car run? How many parts are you going to replace along the way?
I have a question. What is the biggest boat that can fit at your, I don't know, marina?
We've got one in Nassau that I think has had up to a 330 footer. We've got one here in Jacksonville that I think it's around that range. It's the 350 to 400 foot mark. So we
Wow.
deal in everything from accommodating jet skis all the way up into mega yachts.
Jeez.
So
Mega yachts are able to park against a floating dock?
Yeah.
Wow. So you don't go too deep into it, but what kind of system do you have to have for a floating dock to hold up to a mega yacht?
It's about just having a larger structural system to hold it together so you can absorb the impact of them coming up to up to the dock, and then also having enough pilings to hold it in place when the wind's pushing on it or some big waves.
So is that a combination of more pilings, larger pilings, and deeper down?
Exactly. Yeah, you got to get the capacity. So depending on the soil, that can dictate quantity, depth of pile. So yeah, all those things factor into it. And that's the thing is no soil is the same. So it's, generally everything's a little different from site to site.
And so from a marina construction perspective, is there another way other than pilings? Like, is there a way to somehow put concrete all the way down, like piers or something like that? I know we're getting away from floating docks right now, but like, how would you build the ultimate dock if you were just trying to build something that like a cruise ship or something parks against? How do they do that?
Cruise ships are usually a fixed platform, so they will, drive a bunch of steel pipe, and then build a, concrete deck above it. So it's usually they're building a wharf at that point.
So it always comes back to driving something down, no matter what, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not gonna float something generally for a 1,300, 2,000 foot vessel, right? Um,
Yeah, there's no way.
so so it's generally generally those are gonna be fixed docks. I mean, some stuff we just did a cruise up in Alaska, and there's when you get those tide differences, they do have some steel barges that act as kind of the floating docks up there. And we've built some up there. Well, we put one in Ketchikan. I mean, that thing, the dock is, I think, 24, 27 feet wide, 330 feet long. And it's for Coast Guard cutters. So, I mean, that's, pretty good sized vessel.
And that's a floater too. You guys only do floaters, right?
I mean, we'll build anything, but floating is our specialty because that's
Is
what
what you're into, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so you just said a minute ago concrete, and you're only doing floating. So how does one make concrete float? I've seen like concrete construction barges and stuff in the past, and that's always seems like an oxymoron in your brain.
Yeah, so it's not a lot of concrete and a whole lot of foam. So all the modules are filled with a polystyrene foam that I think it's only absorbs 1% is what it's been tested for and certified to. So very impermeable to water absorption. And years and years and years ago, they tried to put some out that didn't have the foam inside. And I think down in, if I remember right, it was down Port of the Isles. I think some of those were splashed, and then they started to sink because concrete's porous, and they ended up having to put foam in after.
So what was the idea, that they were just entrapping air? Wow, and the air was just slowly getting out through the pores in the concrete.
Had to have been it. It was an old subcontractor we had working for us as our kind of lead inspector. But Morgan, he was the one that told me about that, where they had to go through and essentially put foam in after the fact. So,
Is that Butch Morgan of like Morgan Boats?
No, different Morgan. So he knew all the Morgans, but no, he was from Miami, and not from the Naples area, but moved over to Naples in the 80s or something.
Gotcha. So on the topic of concrete, this is I've never really heard of it used in a marine application, but this might be interesting to you. Have you ever heard of aircrete?
Aircrete. I mean, I'm just imagine that's air trained concrete.
So it's guys are using it to make like geodesic domes and stuff like that, and it's basically like as they're mixing the concrete, they're taking like Dawn dish soap. They've put together some kind of rig that turns the dish soap into like a shaving foam consistency when it comes out of the other side, and then they mix that into the concrete as it's being mixed with the water. And I don't know much more about it than that, but it gives like a
lightweight,
extra lightweight version of concrete, I guess, with obviously much lesser structural value. Yeah, there's tons of videos of it online. It's very interesting. There, if you type like in YouTube, like Aircrete Academy or something. So they're making these domes. They'll take, I want to say they were inflating bags, and then putting this over it, and then
I think I saw something like that. It was for like doing quick hospitals and stuff when they're doing whether it's military or aid missions and stuff overseas. I saw something years ago where they essentially inflated a concrete building.
yeah, I could see that. Yeah, well, you can gunite it on too. But now that I'm thinking more about it, some of these guys, they were making these aircrete, they were making blocks, because I remember they were cutting it with like a handsaw. But and that's totally off topic though. But interesting little side note for everybody, I guess.
well, it'd be interesting for a walkway.
Well, I'm not sure if it could potentially have an application in the marine, but maybe you still have the structural foam part and then partial concrete aircrete inside. I don't know. It's probably a $2 idea.
It might be. We've got ours is a lightweight sand concrete, so it's got a lightweight, large aggregate, and weighs about 120 pounds, 117 pounds a cubic foot. So about, let's call it 37 pounds a cubic foot less than normal concrete. So that helps a lot with the flotation, is just using lighter concrete.
Sure.
Every little bit helps.
Oh yeah. So one thing I've always heard about with marinas is like horror stories of someone pulling into the marina and they're just going to stay for a night or two in a transient slip, and then one of their bronze through holes like corrodes away and their boat sinks. Have you heard of that? Is that a real thing?
So generally not happening that fast, but I've heard where zincs will get kind of melted off, and there's something called, there's in freshwater, it's known, it's stray voltage that gets into the water, and up in your area, it's a very dangerous thing. It causes what's known as electric shock drowning, and so there's leaking current into the water, whether it be from the marina or from boats that are improperly wired, and basically they've gone through and assessed, how much current can the human body take before it's lethal, and basically 30 milliamps is the accepted. It can hurt you, right? But most people it won't kill. And when you get north of 100 milliamps, now it starts to get really deadly. And there's unfortunately a lot of studies where people have jumped in the water to try and save somebody they thought was drowning, but they actually got electrocuted. It's a silent killer. And they all of a sudden now you have two victims because somebody tried to go in and save the kid. And that's why it's really important in freshwater marinas, especially, not to go jumping in off the back of houseboats and pontoon boats. And how many of us grew up around marinas and boats and jumped in off the dock?
Dude, I honestly never knew that.
Yeah, no, look up electric shock drowning. It'll scare the death out of you.
So 30 milliamps, if that's not a lethal thing for someone, then is that like someone's jumping in there, they're like, holy shit, that's some spicy water, and like jumping back out, like they're tingling, but they can still control their body?
You're going to feel the tingle. If I remember right, you start having maybe a little bit of contraction of like some of your members, but if you've got like a pacemaker, it could be deadly. Or if you
Wow.
got some heart issues. So there's some really good charts on it that, kind of help explain why it's important for people to, take it seriously. And when you get into a saltwater environment, the, your body's composed of basically some pretty saline water. And so you become basically the perfect path for the ground. And that's what kills you. You become path current. Where in saltwater environment, it kind of all gets distributed out. So it's still dangerous in salt, but I have a bad expression that I tell people: what tickles in salt kills in fresh. And when I worked in a marina when I was in college, I remember I touched a rock, and I remember it was like you could feel the electric through the rock, and come to find out when they were putting a new seawall in, the owner of the marina said, "Oh yeah, they clipped one of the primary wires when they were doing that. We've been meaning to get it fixed." Well, now 20 years later, I realized that can be a pretty deadly thing, especially when fresh water's coming down that canal there in just south of Boca Raton. But there'd be time of year, I know there'd be a time of year where there's a freshwater lens on top that could theoretically kill somebody that's in the water with that current going into it. So
Wow.
it's a serious thing, but it's that straight current that will burn through the zinc. So that's one of the indicators.
Well, that's way more interesting than zincs, though. I mean, I didn't realize. I mean, I guess it makes sense, but so let's say that a guy is a prudent boater and he wants to know what's going on in the marina that he's pulling into. Are you sticking a multimeter in the water, or how do you know what's going on?
So not necessarily a multimeter. So it's when you get into saltwater, it gets kind of hard to diagnose it, right in the water. But in freshwater environments, there's a couple products out there where you can put it in the water and it'll test for the stray voltage. So generally, it's going to be known at the marina. There's actually an update to the National Electric Code that's going to require everybody to do some testing to make sure that there's not ground fault at the individual boats. So that's where there's some new codes out that require much more expensive breakers. So that way, if there is that kind of imbalance and the current going in and coming back on the circuit, it'll pop the breaker. And 99.9% of the time, it's the boat, not the marina. So you get a boat that, somebody has worked on themselves, because not everybody is a certified boat electrician. And it's not like the 12-volt stuff that my boat, takes. I'm talking about the guys with 120, 240, and 480.
So someone doing something janky with shore power.
Yeah. Yeah. Whether it be a bad shore power board, or, somebody installed a new toaster. There's sometimes they'll install something in the boat and the screw will go through a wire and they never knew it. So there's some ways to diagnose what on the boat is causing the issue, and then you get it corrected. We like to recommend having ABYC accredited marine electrician certify that the boat has no leaking current before it comes to the marina when it's new. And everybody says, oh, that's going to be such a pain in the butt. Why do we have to do this? Well, the marinas that have followed that have a lot less issues when the boats return to the marina.
So would there be a way for the marina to be like doing somewhat of a spot check on that?
So there's one group that has a test box that you can use. And the test box basically allows you to, isolate the leaking current on the boat. It'll show you how much, leakage you have. And so that's something that the marina can have to say, look, boater, here's what you've got. Here's what you've got leaking. You've got to fix this before I can let you go into shore power.
And surely the boater would be very curious to know.
Well, usually it's not their problem, right? I've been at 10 different marinas in the last 10 years, and I've never had this issue.
I see.
And so it's never quote unquote the boater's fault. And unfortunately, every time I've dug into it, it has been the boater's fault, not the marina.
Other than like a rare circumstance where a power wire gets nicked or something like that in construction, which is funny that when you said that, because I was going to ask you, how does something like that happen? And you said it before I got a chance to ask you.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's always the chance that through, installation of something got, rubbed or, chipped, or, if somebody accidentally damaged the wire. I mean, we had one in Naples where the guy was trying to get all the barnacles and oysters off the dock and went over the electric cable with a needlepoint pressure washer and cut right through the wire. Thankfully,
Wow.
it had new electric, and the breaker popped, and the guy didn't get electrocuted or anything. But yeah, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that can happen to a new marina.
So in a situation like that, then how is it interacting with the boat hull, whether it's aluminum or fiberglass? Like if that current's traveling into an aluminum hull, that could feel spicy, right?
Yeah, I mean, I imagine if it's a England boat, you might get to feel a tickle if you're getting on or off the boat. What happens is it uses the boat, so like everybody will generally have, like, they'll be bonded to their zincs or something, right? So all the metal components in the boat kind of all get bonded through, so the zincs are sacrificial and the metal doesn't corrode. So when there's straight current,
Just for everyone who doesn't know, bonding a zinc is to run a ground wire to it.
right? And a lot of times that's then tied into the ground wire of the electrical system, which, so therefore that's your path back. So you've got, it's basically the boat becomes the path for the ground to get back to the land. And so that's how it will burn up the zincs, is you've got the one boat inducing current and another one, maybe being its path back into the system.
So it almost sounds like you're trying to get more in the boat that's grounded than not, and so that way the current chooses that as a ground. Is that right?
What you're trying to do is not have any leaking current to start with.
Fair enough. So let's talk a little bit about boat shows. I know that's something that you're into.
Yeah. So when I was down in Marina in Collier County, I was on the board there, and one of their main things that they pushed every year was the boat shows. So, when I first got involved, I was like, what's up with all these local boat shows? I want to go to Lauderdale. I want to go to Miami. I want to go to West Palm. I want to go to the big glamour, right? That's where there's more vendors for me to look at. But the more I got into it, the more I realized that local shows, one, there's a lot of local vendors that show up, and they get some really kind of unique products. But um, it really becomes a funding source for all these groups I talked about earlier. You know, they're not a high dollar entry. There's and marinas all to join, and so the money that's raised at boat shows is what funds the organizations. And so that's where, the local shows, one, it's fun to go, have a beer and look at boats. So whether you're going to buy one or not, it's fun to go look at them. And then if you're going to, buy a new boat, I, I can't just go one time and pick out a boat that I like, right? It's going to take me multiple times. I'm going to look, touch and feel, look at all the other different ones. And I'm not going to be able to go to Lauderdale and pick out my one boat,
No,
so
of
I'm going to
course.
try and find other shows that dealer network is going to be at, so I can, get my feet done up multiple times. And, quite honestly, they recognize you and they'll probably say, oh, hey, back, get those checkbook this time. So,
Yeah, he's one step closer.
exactly. So it's getting that rapport with the local dealer. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's really kind of supporting them because those are the guys that are going to service your boat, regardless of where you bought it. And that organization is who's looking out for your best interest as a boater. So they're the ones that are your watchdog for your local zoning meetings all the way up through the state, and even some of these federal changes like I talked about earlier. They're trying to pass with the NOAA recommending no fishing in North Florida 2 months a year.
And so is that no fishing period, or is that no catch and keep?
So it's no bottom fishing, no hook and line for, there's a couple proposals of December through February or January through February, but don't worry, you can still troll and you can still spearfish. They're trying to essentially limit, the bycatch and, you bring a snapper out for 125 feet or a grouper, there's a chance that they're not going to make it back down through bigger trauma and stuff.
A pretty
Or
good chance,
dolphins,
right?
sharks. Yeah, I think there's a good chance that they'll live. I think the data is a little skewed, saying that 30% of recreational, fish that return to the ocean are going to die. That seems very high to me.
Yeah, I've definitely
Um,
seen many a fish go right back down and do its thing, or sometimes they take a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, I've seen some occasions where people other than myself have let a Jewfish just float, but you
I'll,
know,
I will not admit or deny seeing the same thing.
But then there are those fishermen that'll spend an hour trying to get the fish alive. But
I actually we were going offshore in my one of my good friends World Cats once with it was just a buddy's fishing trip, and we were probably about 60 miles out in the Gulf, and we saw a sailfish bill and tip just flicking through some little grass that was on the surface, and we ended up pitching a bait to it and hooking up to it, catching it, and then Jimmy who was one of the guys who was with us, jumped in the water and swam that thing around for probably, it seemed like 20 minutes, but it was probably like 3 or 4 minutes, honestly. Or, it might have been a little longer, but he made sure he was not getting out of the water and into the boat until that fish swam away. And it was pretty epic watch, start to finish, for sure.
Oh yeah, I mean I've never caught a fish and been happy to see it, perish as it floats away. I mean,
Well, no, because
it's one
then
of
it's
those.
just going in the cooler at that point. But then you got a
If
conflict
it's
with.
legal,
Well,
if
that's
it's
the
legal,
problem, right? You got a conflict with legality.
exactly. So, but yeah, it's their heart's in the right place of what they're trying to do. And no, I just don't think it's. I think it's fuzzy math. In engineering school, we had this imaginary math, and yeah, I think that's what Noah uses in there.
Is that like the kind of math that somebody would generate to try to justify their position?
Kind of, sort of. I remember.
It might not be untrue, but it's kind of like a derived way of looking at it to end up at the answer they're getting to.
Well, perfect example. So the professor said 2 + 2 can equal 5. It all depends on your value too. And I'm sitting here, I was like, you're talking to a room full of engineers. It's 2.00000 plus 2.00000. That equals 4. There's no argument. 2 + 2 does not equal 5. It's something I never gotten behind. But I think it's that kind of fuzzy math that Noah likes to use.
That kind of math that says, well, this is the math that we're using and this is the program, so let's move on.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's part of the game that we end up playing, I feel like. Boater safety.
Yeah, so there's been a new push in kind of more of the Northwest Florida region, and the FWC has been working with the local school districts there to get boater safety taught in schools. So it's actually a state of Florida approved curriculum, kind of with the health, along with the health and driver's ed kind of, teachings in public school. And I'm kind of hoping it catches on. There's a couple other school districts that may be picking it up here in the next year. But I mean, you start looking at, kind of our real popular areas, here where we're at now, Duval County, get down to St. Augustine, Daytona, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm, Miami, Naples, Tampa. You start going around the whole state. And I mean, who doesn't watch qualified captains, right?
Oh,
Who
yeah.
doesn't look at their Instagram feed, 3 times a day, trying to see what, what
Ramp
guys
fails
jump
or hole over
broke
inlet
it.
or
Exactly. Who jumped the jetty, who, got stuck on a sandbar, all that stuff. And, not saying that if they learn it in high school, they're going to be better boaters, but at least it gives them the chance for some formal education on what red right returning actually means,
sure.
and, it's, I think it's a step in the right direction. I mean, let's face it, Florida is the kind of boating capital of the world. And,
Sure. Well, and the money's already
yeah,
been spent, right? The kids are already there. They've already been given lunch or whatever it is. Like, we've already got the infrastructure in place. It's not exactly a big ask to say, let's implement some common sense Florida knowledge to these guys, right?
You know what I got taught?
exactly.
I got taught how to zigzag from an alligator.
Have you ever known anybody to zigzag from an alligator? Because I remember that, too. What
Hey,
the
I
heck?
can tell you, my buddy Scott and I got chased by an alligator on Turner River Road, and we didn't zigzag. We just ran like a bat out of hell, and that gator didn't catch us. So I
Yeah.
think that zigzag stuff is full of malarkey.
And as someone who has hunted a good couple of alligators in my day, I can tell you that they're trying to get away. They're not chasing you. There's no, and if they do like a one out of the water launch, predator style, and get your ass, that's how they get you when you're trying to get your dog from down the edge of the lake or something. But if they don't get you on that first jump, they're not getting you. There's no like, okay, here we go. Let's have a foot race.
Well, we were bass fishing, and I remember my buddy Scott, he caught this little, I don't know, about a 3-pounder, and the gators would come up on the bank, and usually we do like a big stomp, scare them off. Well, this guy just decided to keep coming up the bank, and we ended up hauling butt down Turner River Road and tossing the bass over his shoulder. And I think that was it for fishing that day. We had met our step quota of the day.
Oh yeah, dude, this is not a story that I was expecting to tell today on this podcast, but this just seems like the perfect opening to tell it. I've got a great alligator attack story, and well, I mean, there's someone in the story who wouldn't call it great, but it's not me. But a very interesting alligator attack story. So right before we were moving up to Tennessee, I was trying to get all my Florida stuff out of my system. I was going fishing a bunch at night after we got the kids to bed, and like just wearing out the snook on the docks and hog hunting and just doing whatever I could that I knew I was going to miss. And of course, gator hunting was one of those things that I knew I needed to get my fill. And so season rolled around, and I had a group of like 5 guys who I had gator hunted with for quite a few years in a row, and we all got along real well together, and it was a great group. But no one ended up pulling tags that year. But the previous years, we had always pulled Lee County tags because we always put them as our first priority. And you get to pick like 10 areas off of a map, and they all have like a numerical code. And you pick them in order of like first to least of which you'd like. And county tags are notorious for being kind of the worst, hardest tags to fill because you have to basically like, you're taking scraps out of retention ponds and stuff versus getting like a Everglades tag or St. John's River or Hell's Kitchen or something like that, or even Lake Trafford, where you're just going in a big body of water and just hunting. So we had gotten real good at going around these different ponds, and we would look at little ponds behind businesses, and nowhere was off limits for us. We would scope around on Google Satellite and go check spots out and pulled a gator out of a pond behind a Publix one time, and it was just whatever we could do to fill the tags. Because if you pull tags, it was 2 tags, and I think one year 3 of us all pulled Lee County tags. But so we had gotten used to keeping our eye on the general gators that were in the local watering holes, I guess you would say, in Lee County. But nobody had tags my last year, and so I went into a Facebook group and said, hey, if anyone has Lee County tags and is looking for a little bit of help, I know where there's a couple gators. Try to decide, you know what, I'll just give all the details. So there's some ponds across from Health Park Hospital on Summerlin down there in Fort Myers that are, if you look on the Google satellite, one of them's like a kidney shape, and there's a park on the other side of Summerlin, and there's a set of power lines that runs along it, and like a dirt access road under the power lines for the utilities company to maintain the power lines. And you can go down these power lines, and there's 3 ponds in a row, and the middle one was the easiest to get to, but you had to go through maybe like 15 yards of Brazilian peppers, but there was like a trail that had been beaten through, and at some point somebody had taken like 3 or 4 shipping pallets and made like not even a dock, but like as close as you're going to get to a dock in a tiny little pond. And there's a bunch of landlocked tarpon in this place, so people would go there and just catch these little tarpon. But there was 2 or 3 big gators that lived in this pond. And the year before, I had gone there and I had a little Coleman crawdad, like plastic, like pond puddler thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Almost like a pedal boat.
Yeah.
Like a pedal boat without the pedals.
Yeah.
Exactly. But one guy could drag it through a little opening in the trees and handle it, so I had put this boat in a couple times, and I had snagged this big gator, and the pond was maybe 100 yards long and 30 yards wide or something like that. It was kind of like almost like an hourglass shape, and I had tried to bring cinder blocks with me as an anchor to drop down, but no matter what happened or what I did, every time I snagged the gator, it just ran into the peppers that were overhanging all around the pond and just tangled me up and sat me off. So, it seemed like it was never going to happen. But so I get in this Facebook group. I say, anyone who's looking for help with a Lee County alligator, I know where there's one. And I'm thinking of this area, which the year before I had, lost this gator a couple times. So this guy, Paul, who had just moved down from Maine, he messages and says, hey, I got tags. I've never touched an alligator. I've never seen an alligator in real life. I just moved down from Maine. I just randomly decided to try to get these tags, and I got them, and I don't know what to do with them. I was like, all right, perfect. I'll try to help you out. So I scheduled a meetup with him, and we had eaten some barbecue for lunch that was really not sitting well with me. About an hour before I was supposed to meet him, I started having some pretty gnarly bubble guts, dude. But I wanted this last hunt real bad. So the time comes to meet him. I get in the car. I hadn't puked or anything yet. I just had not been feeling right in the stomach. So I get there, I meet him, and I tell him to meet me at this Publix on Summerlin. There's a little pond behind it. I'm like, there's been a gator here and there. I don't know if he's going to be here tonight, but we'll meet there and we'll check there first. Maybe we'll just get to throw one in the back of the truck and be done with it. So we meet, and I give him the disclaimer right off rip. Hey, my stomach's not feeling, so hot. I don't know exactly where we're headed with this, but I'll do my best for you. So we look behind the Publix at the pond, and there's nothing in there. And I'm like, okay, follow me down the road. You're going to have to follow me down a power line. This is like a gray area kind of spot. It's not illegal. It's just I haven't been given permission to be there. So you tell me what it is. If you want to go, we can go. If you don't, we don't have to. And he's like, let's go. So we went, and, it was actually an FWC guy who had told me about this spot. He didn't say it was legal or illegal, but he said there were some big gators there. So I read between the lines of saying, if the FWC guy doesn't care, then who's going to bust my chops about it? So I take him there, and he had gotten all fired up for this gator hunt, and he had bought online a nice aluminum welded bang stick and an aluminum welded harpoon. We had always used like hardware store stuff that we had made and adapted, and we had a bang stick that my buddy had from spearfishing that we put on the end of a broomstick pretty much, and that was what we always used, and some bow fishing bows. But so he had this nice new fancy gear. So I've got my snag rod with me, and I poke my head through we climb out through the peppers onto this little shipping dock, and I see the eyes reflecting back at me maybe like 30 yards away just off to the left. Take a couple casts, miss, get third cast, put it over his back, snag into him. And it was not the like 11-footer or whatever it was that had smoked me before a few times, but it was a good gator. But I had like 60-pounder or something Power Pro on the rod, and we just basically horsed it in. Sometimes they'll lay on the bottom and you got to wait for 2 or 3 hours before they'll really let you do anything. But this one, we just, for whatever reason, we got the drop on him and got him over to the dock real quick and got a harpoon in him. And then I immediately threw up. And like, that was the start of the food poisoning. And I'm like, dude, for the next probably hour, from the combination of getting the harpoon in the gator to getting it fully secured, bang sticking it and dragging it up the bank, every like 15 minutes, I had to take a break to go and puke. And I'm feeling like death warmed up. But luckily, I'm like half a mile from the house and just, I got it to the point where I helped him to pick the gator up and get it in the truck. It was like 9.5 feet or something like that. This guy was overjoyed with it, but in the process, he dropped his bank stick in the water in this pond. So we get the gator, we get it in the truck. I say, dude, I got to go. I'm dying. I go home. I'm in bed till 4 p.m. the next day, just recovering from puking all night. And I get woken up to my phone ringing a bunch of times. And it's this guy, Paul. And he's saying, yo, dude, have you seen the news? I said, no, I haven't seen anything since I saw you last. I've been passed out asleep or puking. And he said, okay, turn on the news. So I got upstairs and turned the TV on. And sure enough, it's talking about Wink News is like alligator attack at
Health Park.
No, they weren't. It's not Health Park. It is Health Park, but it was across the street. Waxahachie Park, alligator attack. So this guy decided he was going to go back and get his bang stick. Right? He throws his wife in the truck. He goes to get the bang stick. He says, "Honey, stay in the car." He goes through the Brazilian peppers and he's standing on this janky little dock. He's getting ready to jump into this little pond and try to feel around with his feet for this aluminum bang stick, because in his mind, we caught the gator that was in there last night, right? So he's from Maine. He doesn't know Florida shit. So he was literally getting ready to try to find the thing by climbing in. And all of a sudden, before he can do it, he hears his wife screaming bloody murder at the truck. So he goes running back to the truck. And there's this homeless guy that's standing in front of her and the truck with an arm like hanging on by a thread and no shirt, bleeding all over the place. And he's yelling, "The fucking gator ate me. The fucking gator ate me." And this guy had a hole in his chest, a hole in his lung, same hole, and his arms like hanging on by a thread. And apparently he was like a homeless guy that was walking down this trail and dropped his glasses, went to pick him up, and there was a gator waiting in an ambush right there in the bushes, a big one. Grabbed his arm, rolled a couple times, took his arm out of socket. The guy was able to get away, but because it had just ripped his friggin' arm off, he didn't actually get away. It grabbed him again by the chest, punctured a hole in his lungs, and somehow the guy managed to fight it off. And then he sees this guy's truck, so he's walking to the truck right after the attack, yelling, "The gator ate me." And this dude, Paul, who I had taken hunting, just happened to be like a Marine medic or something, and he had chest seal packs in his truck, dude. He sticks a chest seal over this guy's friggin', and he was a Leitran driver. He had come to Florida to retire. He was driving buses, got a friggin' chest seal in his truck. He pops this guy back so he can breathe, calls 911. He's 300 yards from Health Park Hospital. He's on the other side of Summerlin, dude. FWC comes, sheriff comes, ambulance comes, they take him. He was in like a medically induced coma for 2 or 3 weeks and survived. Paul got asked a bunch of questions about who was hunting, if they took a gator or whatever, and nothing ever came of that because we weren't necessarily in the wrong. The landowner actually gave him permission after the fact, a written letter. The landowner turned out to be an attorney. I might have to edit some of this out. I don't know. The landowner happened to be a personal injury attorney. And dude, what a story. And if anyone thinks I'm full of crap, just do 2 minutes of Googling and I promise you will believe. And
that's all your fault.
That was probably 2022.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
End of 21, somewhere in 22, something like that. But anyway, I just took us so far off track with that one.
Yeah, but it was all your fault, Nick. If you had caught that gator the year before,
I know.
Never would have lost
I'm a bitch. Well, now it lives with me. Every night before I go to sleep, I think about that gator.
That's better than our last gator season up here. We, boat maintenance is the thing you should do. And I had bubbles in my steering, and I'll fix it next time. I'll fix it next time. Add a little fluid here and there. Well, we went gator hunting this last November last week, and I had for my tags, and we got about 35 miles from the boat ramp, and then the steering decided not to work. So it was a
Oh
very,
no.
very, very long night to get back. Thankfully, the buddy that came up from Tampa to come with us and his son were troopers, and yeah, we'll make it for it next year.
Wow. So did it just the air bubble got in the helm and it just wouldn't do anything? It was just kind of going bump 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 when you turn the wheel.
Seals ended up being completely blown. So I was able to get some fluid back in it and get to a nearby boat ramp. And the next morning I woke up and there's a nice shiny sheen.
Sure.
Feel the concrete at our rental here.
Dang. Well, hey, as a side note, if anyone's wanting to do some gator hunting in Fort Myers, hit up my boy Billy Love. He is the man when it comes to alligator hunting. Totally unrelated, but I promise you will not be disappointed.
Go to Waxahachie Park.
Do not go to Waxahachie Park. Watch your ass in Waxahachie. Watch your assy park. So yeah, what else? Let's talk about some recreational stuff. What about where do you like to go in Florida? How do you get down?
Well, before we moved up here, our favorite spot was to go down to Chokoloskee. So, we'd take the Hewes and head down that way. We had some good spots around the Chatham River, and we'd go out to Lossman's. I used to joke my son was the self-proclaimed king of Lossman's Key because during COVID, they were actually enforcing, no gathering in big groups during COVID in the national park. Which is kind of crazy. But we'd go post up there, and little 1-year-old baby fall asleep in the shade. We'd be fishing and just have a good time with it all. But yeah, getting down there was awesome. There were no jet skis allowed. I know you like jet skis, but
Nah, they
some
have
of
their
us,
place. They have their place.
yeah, and it's not Everglades National Park.
It definitely is not. I agree 100% with that.
And so, we really enjoyed it down there. And it's a long drive to go fishing down there now, but up here, there's plenty of sandbars.
That is like the Florida. If there's anything left of the Florida, that's it. But you better like mosquitoes.
Yeah, you get used to them eventually. But you'd see anywhere from like maybe 8 to 15 boats in a day.
Yeah.
You'd really have to try to see more boats. And I never had any bad run-ins with law enforcement. They were all really nice to me down there. I know a few people, Park Service guys, and them didn't get along so well. But, all the other fishermen were great. All the, Mr. Green Jeans was always nice to meet down there. So
I feel like with those guys, you get what you give.
well, we got one buddy who's the nicest man in the world, and they gave him a ration of shit for some reason. So it's, I think, depending on who you get.
I got a buddy who is the nicest, most passive, coolest guy in the world. Like, I've never seen him bump off the meter one time. And I was fishing with him not too long ago, and we got pulled over by Green Jeans, and all of a sudden the fire came out of this boy. I've never seen him speak like disrespectfully to anyone, but he started off pissed off at these guys. I'm like, damn, dude, you got more common sense than that. But, some people just have a thing with law.
Yeah, they're out there to do their job, and I've just, maybe I've been lucky to not be breaking the law when they stop me, so I haven't had too many problems.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is that, and as long as you're.
But yeah, I mean that was. Oh, good.
No, I was just gonna say if you're not doing anything wrong, it's pretty easy to project a cool, calm, and collected perspective to them, and usually they just kind of roll with it. And if you're trying to hide something, they catch on to it pretty quick.
You're twitchy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. But I mean, I've been told the fishing up here is great. We've caught a couple of redfish. We've gotten out a few times. Weren't able to really hit it hard this last summer, but I haven't caught a lot of tarpon, but I got a really good one down the Chatham River one time, and I'm hoping that I can kind of find the honey holes up here. But I mean, we caught one. It was hilarious. I got her set up on the bow. We were gonna fish a bank for snook, and we had some nice finger mullet, and she's up there, got the trolling motor going, and it's only a 16-foot Hewes. I got a huge bimini top on it, and so if the bimini's up, it's almost impossible to fish the back unless you stand on the back little. It's got those little sponsons off the back, like the
Yeah,
old
the
Hewes
little life
disc.
wells.
Yeah, so I'd close those off so that they're kind of like a wet storage area. You, they stay pretty dry. Actually, that's about an inch different in draft. I found out when
Oh,
they're
I would
dry
have to.
versus if you got water in them. And but I go back there and I drop my mullet in the water and I get to watch this tarpon come up and eat it. And it was the coolest thing. I mean, I didn't cast it; just literally ate the mullet right at the boat, and it just took off. And I'm using snook rod. I got a Ireson 3000, reel, medium, rod, and I'm like, oh my god, how am I going to fight this thing? Can't get it to turn for the life of me. And right down the way comes this guy. He's in the biggest john boat I've ever seen. This thing had to be 20 feet, and he wouldn't stop. And I just yelled at the top of my lungs, "Effing stop!" And he heard me. Apparently, I was loud that day. And he came off playing, and the tarpon jumped like 10 feet in front of the bow of the boat.
Nice.
And yeah, he about cracked himself because this tarpon almost landed
Oh,
in it. Then it turned into about a 45-minute fight. We got to land it. It
there's
was
nothing like it. There's nothing
fight
in
of
the
my
world
life for
that can
fishing.
compare to the experience of getting on in a battle with a tarpon. Even if it's just for 10 or 15 seconds, just to realize it's crazy.
Yeah,
They are the
yeah.
most powerful
And
acrobatic fish.
oh, it was beautiful. And my wife surprised me. She ended up getting it. They had Gray's Taxidermy make me, a replica mount, and we had it hanging in our house there in Naples. And so when the house is done up here, we got to figure out what wall we're gonna, kind of hang the fish back
Very
up
nice.
on.
That's a good wife
But
right
that's the
there.
kind of stuff I'm hoping we can find. Oh, I got lucky. I got very lucky. Um, but yeah, we're trying to we'll get it dialed in up here. I know the tarpon are supposed to run through certain times of the year. They got the bull reds. I haven't done that up here yet. I'm
There you
really
go. Well,
excited
and you
to do
must not
that.
have to run far into the Atlantic to get a little depth, I'm sure.
Um, I think they're running about 60
Oh,
miles
wow.
here, so it's not like when you're down in
I
West Palm. Yeah, like that Jupiter to Miami area, it's only a couple miles, but then the shelf starts to go. Yep, nope, nope. It starts. It's a good
Wow,
little
gotcha.
ride here,
Okay.
so that's why
Interesting. Hmm. Nice.
we'll be taking the Hughes to go trolling here. So
Well, man, that's I didn't think we were going to get an hour and 40 minutes in, but it was pretty easy to do. And this was a super awesome conversation. I think you're going to set a really hard standard to meet for guests being the first one. We thought it might be a little bit of a rough warm up, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So, man, we really appreciate you spending a little time with us tonight.
Thanks, Josh.
yeah, no
Yeah,
problem. It
it
was
sure
fun.
was. And we kind of had a whole gang of other things that we could have touched on too. So I have a feeling this will not be the last time that the Boats and Pros see Josh.
That sounds good, man. I had a good time, and if you guys ever need help getting some other creative people on, I can try and trick a few to
We're
get
going
on
to
the
try
line
to
with
do
you.
a guest every week if we can. So I have no doubt that I'll be hitting you up for that. And also, if you get a chance, I would love to put some pictures of your Hewes with this episode.
Oh yeah, no, I'll send you a couple good ones. All right, well, guys, this was great, and if anything didn't record well and you need to give me a ring back,
Thank you,
feel
brother.
free
I
to.
appreciate it. This, sorry, go ahead, John. John.
Do
All
you have
right.
anyone you want to mention as for your own benefit?
Yeah, you got a shout out?
Yeah.
What's your podcast? I'm just kidding.
Oh, I know. I mean, I listen to podcasts all day at work. So, I mean, it's just uh, these things are awesome, man. I love hearing everybody's stories when it comes to the fishing politics and you guys getting into the boat restoration stuff. It's been fun to listen to because right now we don't have a place to work on the boat. I don't have any immediate projects that I'm working on, so it's just kind of a way to you know keep in it without having to itch a
Well,
fiberglass.
I'll tell you, dude, a kind of a third really good reason to have you on as the first guest is because you're actually the one who kicked me in the butt a little bit to get back organized with this. So I thank you for that.
Well, yeah, I joked with you that I'd just start calling you and recording it
I
and put
know.
it together for you.
Hey,
So there's
that's
a
what
little
friends are
Thank you
for,
for
right?
having
You
us.
get a little accountability here and there.